housing. And then somewhere along the line, when it was being debated on the whole committee, it turned to 1.5. Now, we rejected it flatly. We rejected it completely flatly.
And what was the reason for the rejection?
Well, we said that there was no regulatory framework around this thing. Just like Tom says, first of all, there is nothing in this act or in the regulation that compels Treasury to use this money for the purpose for which it is intended. They could simply just show up the revenue on the exchequer, and like every other money that they raise through KRA, use it whichever way, because nothing in the act and nothing in the regulations compels Treasury to do that.
Right.
We also thought that, and this is more fundamental, this thing is social housing. This thing is not about the middle class. This thing is not about the rich. If you may think about it, it's like an Obamacare kind of thing.
Right.
I was very impressed when it came as a concept, because I was thinking about my people in Madari. I was thinking about my people in Korogosho. I was thinking about Kibera, so that people who are of some disposition are able also to contribute for the people who are at the lower ladder to have decent and affordable housing.
Right.
But it has all changed. Now you can see that people who are in the bracket of, I don't know, 50,000 to so much, are entitled to some mortgage. Or they have now stratified it. They are calling social housing, they are calling low-cost housing, then they are calling the mortgage scheme. Now look, the guy who lives in Umoja has what is called decent housing. He could be a tenant, but that is decent. But the guy who lives in Korogosho should be the guy whom we are thinking about. And the government should be thinking about social urbanization development policies, like where I come from in Ruaraka. We have slum upgrading projects as an urban development project and so on. It was never meant to show up the middle class. So a beautiful thing, but which has been hijacked, and it is now being used completely out of
context and how it was supposed to be. Honorable Elachi, your opening remarks in regards to this before we listen to Honorable Musalia Mudavadi and what he had to say. But your opening remarks on this.
Well, I think a very noble idea, and it was structured closer to what we had on NHIF. And you remember during the time when Anyang Nyong, when he was the Minister of Health, when he was pushing for the policy of NHIF in terms of ensuring we include those who are or who don't have, who are unable to afford health. That's how NHIF comes, and until we get to where we are today. Now you have the housing project that was supposed to also bring in the Bill of Rights, where we talked about dignity of our people and the government providing shelter to its people. Then we come and and Kenyans are very much willing. They are not fighting the idea. Kenyans are just wondering. We came with NHIF, we agreed we will be deducted more money so that we can support our fellow Kenyans who can't afford
health.
But you came, you have mismanaged the whole thing. You have not even told us where we are. As when you removed the CEO and everyone, you have not told us. You have restructured NHIF to follow this process. This is the framework. And now we will not lose money. And Kenyans are still able to go to hospitals and get affordable health care. Now you've come to housing. In this housing, first of all, without bringing in politics, if you are really serious about it, you can't tell us the looters of the new housing fund can pay 10,000. This one is one thing they sneaked. The president never saw this. While we are hitting on him hard, his officers sneaked in and realized...
But if he's the president and he has signed, if he appends his signature, then he's fully responsible for it.
He's responsible now because if you ask the president today, who is fighting corruption, that someone who loots housing for people when we are fighting for them to have dignity.
Their fine is 10,000.
And your fine is 10,000. Really, it is very wrong. In fact, this is where it starts stinking. In fact, we don't need to discuss
Does that then tell you, Honorable Elachi, that there could be people who are trying to use this scheme that maybe came from the president, but for their own gain?
Of course, yes. And that is why, as women, we are saying, first we want to see the framework. We want to see how you have taken care of each person, and also tell those who are contributing that you are supporting a Kenyan who lives in Mathare, who lives, and anyway, where is UN Habitat? Where are the stakeholders? Because they did a very good job in Kibra. Why are we not following that process of Kibra, of housing, in terms of this process? Why are we not telling Parliament our framework, number one, of creating awareness? Because Kenyans will want to see sensitization in the whole process. Even when I'm contributing, I need to be told, I will be contributing so that so and so, or this group in this county, because they're saying it will go per county. So have you sat down even with the counties to tell them, this is the title deeds of the lands we've already identified. Therefore, when we start deducting money, we're not going to keep money. No, we have land. This is after we have acquired land. This is the plan. I have not even seen them here giving us the plan, showing Kenyans, this is the plan that we are rolling out. We are able to do 2 houses in a day, 5 houses in a day, 10. But you can't just deduct people's money and then go and keep it somewhere in an account and use it for other things. Then when the day will come for the real housing, even the money won't be there.
It will not be there.
It won't
All right,
be there.
I want us to listen into what Honorable Musalia Mudavadi had to say, and then we can continue this debate. But remember, we're also asking you whether you feel that this is something that should be suspended. But for now, let's listen to what Honorable Musalia Mudavadi had to say.
On the Kenyan worker purports to be an intervention that will provide comfort in shelter. Yet it is at once insensitive, burdensome, because you are taxing an already overloaded worker. It is also unlawful. This worker is already burdened with just about the highest income tax in the world today. Add to this value-added tax on a wide range of goods and services, load on a myriad of levies on petrol and petroleum products, then now bring in this new levy. You are killing the goose that lays the golden egg. Kenyans must be left with something from the sweat of their brows. If this government is truly committed to affordable housing, it must make it possible for Kenyans to build houses affordably on their own.
Abodege, what are some of the structures that you feel should be in place if we all agree that this is a good plan if it was done right? There seems to be so many things, so many question marks. I mean, just what Honorable Beatrice Elachi has highlighted here, and it's on page 9 of the Standard today, 10,000 shillings for those who loot this kind of
Thank you. When you look at what we are trying to implement currently, as my colleague has talked about it, first, it's not protected. It has been overexposed to looters. Number 2, before even thinking of deducting money of workers to make housing fund, you have to make the workers accept the fund, accept the scheme. I don't want to talk about the fund. Let me talk about the scheme. They must accept the scheme. The scheme must be owned by them because they're the people who are contributing. That's why he's talking about the NHIF structure. Me, I want to bring in the NSSF structure. Again, number 2, they must also be assured that entering the scheme can be voluntary and leaving the scheme can be voluntary. Number 3, you should not be confined to have a house in town. You should also be given option to own a house where you want.
After all, you're the contributor.
Yeah, to own the house where you want. Because there are people who are in Nairobi here, but their heart is at home and they don't have houses at home. You give them that option to own the house where they want. Then give them the scheme to own it. Then now the government should come in and say, for those Kenyans who are not able to benefit from this fund, this is how we are going to support them as the government. But you don't just transfer the whole burden to the workers who are already overburdened. The way Mudavadi is putting it, a Kenyan worker today, me and them seated here, when you look at what we are carrying home from our earnings, is less than 40%. Because you surrender your 30%, you go to the market, you again surrender 16% in the form of VAT. Then now you go to the real tax where you pay some things you cannot even account for another 10%. You take home less than 40% as your income. Now we again come with another tax, which is not well explained. You don't know even how you are going to benefit. Like when you tell us people are balloting for the houses, how about those who will not manage, and you tell them they'll go home?
Somebody has described it like a lottery. It's more
like that lottery thing. It should be mandatory. If you are a member of the scheme and you have accepted with the scheme, you must be served.
All right, Honorable Kajwang, help us understand on how a scheme like this has been put out. It's already being brought to the public, yet there's so many questions that have been left unanswered. How is it that it goes through that whole process? There's a question of public participation, which is enshrined in the Constitution. Many Kenyans are left wondering, really, do I have to do this? Many are feeling coerced and forced.
Exactly. This is the thing that when this legislation was proposed, you remember it came as a finance bill. A finance bill looks more like a statute miscellaneous amendments bill, where it should just be some small salt-like or pepper-like legislation changing and or commas and so on. But they decided to bring a raft of these things to take advantage of that period. And one of the things that you remember, I stood very strongly in the National Assembly when this issue came. It was put together with the levy on fuel and so many other things. And so we say that this should have been a stand-alone legislation, which would have given Kenyans an opportunity to debate it, to give their views in terms of public participation and so on, so that it is then also accompanied by a policy paper. As yet, there is no policy on this issue, as I tell you right now. But the thing which my sister has said, which I want to expound, the president may have the political responsibility because he signed the legislation. But I think we need to unmask some of the people behind the president, because they are making the president look very bad. The president knew that he was talking about social amenity to the poor. He was talking about what is in Soweto. That is what we were told when this legislation was being presented to us. But somebody from Treasury, the Thuges of this world, the advisors in State House who are doing legislative advice, hijacked the process and they misconstrued it altogether. So what was a social amenity now became like a gift to the property. Look, you can't force me to have a house. It's unconstitutional. I mean, I have my little salary and I'm able to buy a house or I'm able to rent a house. I have what is called affordable and decent housing in terms of the Constitution. So you can't force me. But we can agree as a nation that, yes, there is a group, there's Kenyans who are living in squalor, who are living in less than decent places. And so for these people, we can tax ourselves and contribute something more to be able to get them affordable housing. This is what it means. And why not bring in the private sector? Why are the private sector not participating in this?
But then the question to you, Mheshimiwa, as a member of parliament, how did this pass you?
Well, it didn't pass us. It didn't pass us. We fought with every fiber that we had.
So how is it that we're here today debating about it and the government has already put it as a...
This is what happens, that the president has veto powers by way of what is called a memorandum. When he returns a legislation which we have refused, he can bring a memorandum back to the National Assembly that this must be passed. And we have to have 2/3 majority to override the president's memorandum. This is what happened. But the blame must squarely lie where it belongs. The president, I am sure, had honest and good intention to fulfill that Bill of Rights. But the people, and this is what happens even in the Swasuri thing that we were talking about, it is that endemic corruptive mind of Kenyans that everything they take advantage and they want to loot from every
So Honorable TJ Kajwang, we keep saying there are people responsible, not the president. We can't keep blame shifting, and we have this amorphous people we cannot identify. Yet, as a country, if the court did not suspend, and we don't know how it's going to go, soon we might be taxed at 1.5%. Who are these
Well,
people?
I sympathize with the president, but I think the president knows his advisors. If he needed to do what is honest, he should fire those people. This has really brought him in bad light. They are in treasury here. They are behind him. They are right there in State House.
Honorable Elachi, who are these people? Do you agree that there are people here who possibly are trying to take advantage of what the president has good intentions, but are taking advantage of it for their own gain?
Well, they are not people. I think the whole department has to just face the president and tell him the truth. And the drafters, those who did the draft when he rejected, when Parliament rejected, they went and put it under the budget. There were amendments of,
yes,
of the finance bill.
Yes.
Yes, and I think they were in that finance bill. And that's how they were unable to get the 2/3 to veto what the president had brought. But at the same time, we have the ministry. It's a full ministry. So they are not these people. They are workers in the ministry. And this is not the first time they are doing this. You find many of the challenges. When we were reading some regulations of dairy, I mean, do you sit down and do such? It means you want to sabotage, because you know very well there's somewhere the president will be found, and people will start saying, oh, because they are doing the business. Oh, you know, time has come where we don't need to pretend. People do it deliberately because they know this will hit now the president. So we have those, we have reached at a point in our government that we have those who want to see every time bad light on the president. Mm-hmm. And they, because of all the different politics that we are playing in the country. And I just want to tell them, it is wrong to play politics with development. And I think when I listened to Atoli, that's what he was saying, that look, we agreed at 0.5. You come and you change. Why? Those are some of the questions Kenyans. Now, when you come out too late, we are talking about it now, Kenyans are wondering, this housing, what is it? And you're bringing it at the point when we are talking of web of shame in lost millions, I don't know, billions to do of water, and then you're still telling us you want to tax Kenyans with all the levies that they are counting now, the road levies, the fuel levies, there are so many levies that we've put in place, taxes that are being cut. Then at the same time, you even don't imagine there are Kenyans who are working, but they can't even eat 2 meals in a day. But they wake up every day to bring tax back to you. And then you have not even cleaned the whole team. And I have said, this is a Jubilee team that has to sit down and agree. Somewhere we have gone wrong to our country. Somewhere we have messed our country. Sit down the way the president is saying, tone down the politics. Let us relook at where we've gone wrong and reorganize ourselves and see, so that even when we are telling Kenyans we are going to tie ourselves into hard times, Kenyans will appreciate. Kenyans will say, yes, you have realized you have done wrong. But nobody comes out to say we have done wrong. You just bring wrong idea, wrong issues. Every day, the wrong way of doing things. It is not right for Kenyans.
Honorable Dege, how do we get ourselves out of this?
We must accept that we are in the hole and we should stop digging. And when we come out of that hole comfortably...
We will accept, because we have the judge now who has suspended it, but if it goes through, then come the 5th of May, I think it's by the 5th of May, we'll have Kenyans taxed at 1.5. They don't know what they're paying for. We don't know how this scheme works. We don't know how we're supposed to get the houses. Who gets the houses? Is it me and you?
I don't want us to leave the burden to the judges. Let the ministry and the housing department accept that whatever they have done was hurriedly done. They come back, talk to the workers who are contributors, come and engage with Parliament. We come up with a structure which is acceptable to everybody in this country. But if you do it the way we are doing it, you don't walk alone and you leave people behind and you expect them to support you. work with the people if you expect them to support you. But the current structure which the PS is trying to put through, it will meet resistance up to the end. Because as you are
Meet
talking now,
resistance, but it may also go through.
No, but you see, as a matter of comfort, this thing is unconstitutional.
Yeah.
I have no shadow of doubt in my mind that the judge will find this thing to be unconstitutional. But you see, the thing is, if the judge were to find that it is unconstitutional, I have looked at some of the impressive arguments which have been put out there in the court on this matter. If he were to come to that conclusion, then of course it will be stillbirth. Again, which does not help us, because the original idea, as it were, is a very impressive thing.
Correct.
But how do we then implement it in such a way that it goes to the philosophical foundation that we started it with? I think that when the judiciary will pronounce themselves on this matter, it will come back to both the ministry, but majorly to the National Assembly, to be able to provide suitable amendments in this legislation that brings it back to order. But one thing which should not escape us is this regulation that the PS is acting upon. I am ashamed that there are regulations, because only two things could have happened. Either his regulations did not come to the National Assembly, which then makes it void and unconstitutional, or that he sent those regulations and the Committee on Delegated Legislation passed those regulations. I would be very embarrassed if my colleagues at the legislative, a regulation such as to fine somebody 10,000 for looting people's money. I mean, were these people looking at these regulations before the PS passed these things? So, but it happens, that's the problem with the Kenya we live in today. When the big wigs want to have their way,
they somehow push their way through.
That's the problem.
And maybe, Madam Elachi, what we need to do is also look at the possibility, if this goes through, we hope that the judges, of course, are going to independently rule in favor of Kenyans, so that we have a better, like Mheshimiwa says, the idea, the original idea, is a good idea.
Absolutely.
But has been overtaken by maybe other elements which we are not sure how, because we don't even have a structure of how this money is going to be utilized, which becomes worrying. So what do you see as the way forward?
I think the best way forward is the ministry has heard the voices of Kenya. The Constitution stipulates very clear that we must have public participation in all these things. Now, this is something that is being contributed by Kenyans. It's not government, so you can't push it down to Kenyans. If it was government contributing to the kitty, it's different. It will have moved. But I just want to say, this is one of the big four agendas of the president. And therefore, it is for the ministry and the minister, the CS, to sit down and relook at the whole process. Relook at sit down with stakeholders that will give you the best ideas. As much as we are doing all this, we haven't even been told the low-cost housing, is it with the new technology where we are doing prefabs, or is it our stone, the normal way of how we've been doing housing? Now, if it's in prefab, do we have young people who are already somewhere at NYS being given skills? Have you gone out to, as he said, Mheshimiwa, doing the benchmarking? Have you gone to Germany, to Turkey? I know they have the best nowadays. Look at what they are doing, so that if you want to achieve this housing and low-cost, you will achieve. And they might even advise you that the monies you are looking are somewhere where we can now relook, and the same person is not living free in Mathare or Kibera. They pay rent. So why can't we have a framework where you are building, yes, with new technology, and you agree with private companies or investors to come in, support you on this agenda. From there, I who pay 2,000 continue paying my 2,000 as I have somewhere Kenyans who are also supporting me in this kitty. That way, you'll have made me also be involved, be dedicated, and responsible and accountable, that I'm going to have a house better than what I'm living in, but this is how. Secondly, before you come up with anything and telling us now the houses is coming, show Kenyans where this land is, please. Show them so that they start having trust that indeed the housing project is viable. We have land in the counties. Just come out and tell Kenyans. If it is in, for example, Machakos, we have 2,000 acres, this is the land, the governor will come out and say, yes, I am ready for this project. An investor will come in and we will have a different plan than now, the way we want to now push it to the necks of Kenyans, yet some of them are on mortgage. So what are you telling a Kenyan who is also being deducted? Where are you going to even get the man? Like if it is a member of parliament, he's supposed to clear his mortgage in 4 years. He has zero salary, and yet now you want to come and again tell him, within that pay slip, which is about negative, even the members of county assembly, they are paying some mortgages somewhere for 4 years to clear. Then you come in and you say, now we want to deduct. How?
That's not going to work.
It's
all right,
wrong.
Honorable Dege, the trust, like Honorable Elachi has mentioned, is something that Kenyans don't have. For Jubilee to deliver 500,000 houses by the end of their term, they need to be building approximately 11,500 houses every month. We've not even started. That land has not been identified. Who is fooling who? I mean, at the end of the day, if this money starts being deducted in May, what happens to that money? Where does it go?
That's the question we're asking the government, because if you deduct money and you retain in the national treasury, it will form part of the revenue. It will not make any difference, because money in the government treasury can attend to any emergency. But if you deduct money and you deposit in a separate account, like we talk about NSSF, like now we are talking of housing scheme, that's when you are assured of the safety of the money. But when you deduct money and you try to exchange it between the government ministries, that one is not the money belonging to the people who contributed it. That one is part of the revenue of the country. What I'm saying is this. For us to realize housing scheme in this country, first we must create a real scheme. How do we create a real scheme? The scheme must be owned by the government, the contributors, and even the employers, those who are also contributing in the scheme. Let these people form the board of trustees, create a scheme, open an account of the scheme, come up with agreeable investment plan of that money, agreeable investment plan of that money, and let those people who are going to contribute be involved and be made to agree and be made to know how they are going to benefit out of this scheme. Nobody will resist. But deducting money before telling people what you are intending to do with the money and how this money is going to benefit them, to me, I think that is theft.
That's theft. All right, Honorable TJ, your thoughts on your responsibility as a member of parliament on how to move this forward. You are a representative of the people, and as a result, we expect that if you have any question marks here, you have a responsibility. What role do you have that you can play to ensure that this does not proceed?
You know, Maura, they say that in modern slavery, people don't have to walk in chains and fetters because people walk on debts and mortgages.
Right. As a slave.
As a slave. I think some of us who represent the people who are in the category of those who do not enjoy affordable and decent housing feel very aggrieved with what is going on. We feel that people are using our pathetic conditions, the squalor in which we live, the misery of us all, using that picture to be able to hijack the process. I tell you that this is not going to work. Be assured. If something will work, like Tom Odege was saying, that somebody withdrew from a case, if we would see Federation of Kenyan Employers also withdrawing, I can tell you that TJ Kajwang will not withdraw. I have a mandate with my people.
Right.
If it does not work, I'll work for my people. But I will not see a system in which people are being fleeced, quote, quote, on the basis that they are trying to create some affordable housing and are creating it for their own. It's a terrible thing, and I know that Kenyans will be behind it. But you see, the thing is that we need to be thinking as Kenyans. If it is a question of shoring up, and I'm sure, I think the problem, to be frank, Treasury just wants more money. They are livid because...
So is this just a fundraising?
Yes. What they need to do, there are better ways of raising those funds. What they need to do is tighten up this kind of corruptive measures, take away some money from the thieves, the one they have, get a few assets recovered from some of these people, and get the system back. And they will have raised much more money than they would have by telling guys who are maids who are earning less than 8,000 bob. Taking money from them. I mean,
actually, it's having people who would never own those houses contribute towards a house that you'll never own, never live in, which is unfortunate. And I want us to wrap this up. I'll come to your closing comments. I'll give you a chance to give your closing comments, but I want to read through some of the comments that have been coming through so far. And we have Robert who says it must be abandoned. No two ways. Kenyans need food, not houses. And this should be a message to those behind this, housing plan. They should leave Kenyans to plan how to build their houses. Let them remove the taxes on housing and create a government housing fund that Kenyans can borrow with low interest rates and build their houses. There's Caroline who says, why reconsider? The government should forget about that and go back to the drawing board to see if they can come out with another scam and can steal through. Let them take a no for an answer. I'll read one more before I come to your closing comments. Citizens have no business doing harambe for government. We only need 1.1 million to construct a 2-bedroom house in Kisumu. How can I pay the same house for 2 million for 25 years? And if I die and fail and lose, I lose everything. So Kenyans, obviously, if this is anything to go by, not buying into that idea. Let me start with you, Honorable Elachi, your closing comments in this regard.
Well, I think, as we say, it's a noble idea. It's the big four agenda of the president. I think what Kenyans want to see is a proposal that is transparent, a proposal that shows them not 25 years. As the last Kenyan just said that indeed, if he is able to build a
house for 1.1
in Kisumu. Even me, I was shocked that a 1-bedroom will cost I don't know how much. I'm like, no. But we now know how to build houses as much as we don't even know how to calculate. But we've seen it is wrong. Even the already show somewhere we are not doing it right. So I would want the whole Department of Housing, the PS, to relook at the whole proposal, come back to Kenyans. In fact, he needs to just come out and say, we'll keep it on hold, give ourselves a time frame, a framework, and Kenyans are willing. Most Kenyans go for mortgage because they are willing to buy these houses. Now, can we do it the different way? Can we have Kenyans now contributing to a house they have seen? Can the government look for money somewhere? And if you start off-plan, how come Kenyans we go for off-plan and we trust that that off-plan will work? But you see now, we've refused to follow all the proposals that Kenyans do when they're doing housing. The government has to come up with a clear proposal. Kenyans will, themselves, those who want housing,
they'll be willing to contribute
it
right.
As long as you take and you show him this is where your house will be, and we are starting today, they will come for the off-plan.
All right,
and you'll have the same money, even more than what you're looking for.
Honorable Dege, your closing comments on your behalf and on behalf of the Kenya Civil Servants as Secretary General.
Let me assure the workers of this country, especially civil servants, that we are not going to relent until such a time when we'll be convinced whatever is in place is good for them. Because the current one, I can say very clearly that this is tax, not meant to benefit the contributors.
All right. Honorable TJ Kajang, your closing comments.
Even as we say Kenyans, who are Kenyans? The majority of Kenyans live in the rural. So if government wants to build houses, instead of even the Kisumu guy who is building with 1.1, houses in my rural village with 200,000, I've built a very decent and affordable housing. So this thing is all complicated. The Maasais would want to have decent and affordable housing. I mean, we are talking about just the Nairobi person or the Nakuru person or the Mombasa person. Why are we not talking about the mass of Kenyans who actually make it, bring the cake together? So this thing is murky. We have to agree on the foundational the philosophical foundation that we want to proceed from. If it is a social amenity, then we are taking care of the urban slum dweller. And then we grow out a plan that then takes care of these people when they live in those urban settlements. But to go out the way they have, as you were asking, who is fooling who? Yeah. But anyway, time will tell.
Time will tell.
Who is the fool?
Who is the fool in this case? Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. That's Honorable TJ Kajwang, Member of Parliament, Ruaraka, Honorable Beatrice Elachi, Speaker of the Nairobi County Assembly, and Honorable Tom Odege, Member of Parliament, Nyatike, also Secretary General, Kenya Civil Servants. And that's where we wind up State of the Nation. Keep the